Hello and welcome. I'm glad that you can join me. Today we're going to talk about evidence and what it means for writing academic and scholarly papers. So what exactly is this evidence? Well, in any assignment that you have, whether it's oral presentations, written papers, or multimedia assignments, you're going to be asked to present evidence. And evidence is what you'll be using to support your claims or establish backing for the points that you're trying to make. You'll need to use valid and credible evidence to make your argument strong and convince your readers and audiences. So it's important not just to consider what types of evidence will support your ideas, but also the types of evidence that are considered credible within your academic discipline. Education science is interdisciplinary. We pull from the social sciences, we pull from humanities, we also pull from informatics. So the types of evidence that you use would vary based on the audience you address. You'll also find that the type of assignment you have is going to vary in terms of what's considered evidence. So you'll need to carefully read your assignment so you understand what sources of evidence are required. Do you need to use scholarly sources? Do you need to go to historical documents? Do you need to look at code and software? Or are you going to be asked to take observations in schools or reflect on your own past experiences? So it's critical that you understand what sources of evidence are required for your assignments. And if you're not sure, ask your instructor. In general, the gold standard for evidence in scholarly articles and scholarly writing are the peer-reviewed journal articles. These are papers that have been vetted or reviewed by other researchers and have basically been given the thumbs up by other scholars and researchers. They're considered trustworthy sources. Additional sources may be statistics derived from empirical studies or large databases, such as the census. Additional sources also include primary sources. If you're, for example, looking at official documents, laws, maps, these are all primary sources that you can use as sources for evidence. And finally, an additional type of source of evidence could be findings from your own research, or they could be observations that you make. So taken together, evidence can take a variety of forms, and you really want to be careful that you read your assignments carefully so that you can fulfill the demands of that assignment and use appropriate evidence. Now that you have a broad understanding of how important evidence is and the types of evidence that you might use, let's look at the different functions of evidence. The first function or way that evidence can be used is to provide background information and provide context for the questions that you're looking and examining in your assignment. You can use evidence to support your claims. You might provide an example to illustrate or clarify your position or your point. You can use evidence to critique a claim or a counter-argument. Finally, you can also use evidence as a way of illustrating another author's position. So there are a variety of different functions of using evidence. Now let's take a look at the different ways you might present evidence in your writing. The first is the most common in research and academic scholarly writing, and that's paraphrasing, where you provide information from your source in your own words. You might also use direct quotes, so you'll present information using your source's exact words. This is less frequent in scholarly writing unless the exact wording is particularly important or powerful. Another way evidence is used in scholarly writing is general allusions to bodies of knowledge. It's well known, the field says, and it could allow you to synthesize multiple sources. I do issue a caution. Do not say research says without including any sources. When professors see someone say research says, it's well known that, and no one cites anyone, then it comes across as you didn't have time or you're making stuff up. So please be sure to always cite your sources. The fourth way that evidence can be used in your writing is in summarizing. So you might present an overview of an entire text or study, or you might synthesize multiple sources concisely, and you can use summaries to provide background information or ground your position, or even an alternate position that you might be arguing against. All right, we've just talked about the different types and sources of evidence you can use and the different functions that evidence can provide. You've got that in your paper. Does that mean you're done? And the answer is no. Evidence does not speak for itself. In fact, one of the biggest challenges I've seen in students' writing is that they'll present some evidence, but they don't provide any commentary. They don't elaborate on it. And actually connecting evidence to your claim or point is critical for academic writing. So providing commentary helps your reader understand your thinking. It helps the reader understand why the evidence is important and how it connects to your point. So without the commentary, the evidence just doesn't work. Never fear, we've got questions that you could ask yourself to help you write strong commentary and make your evidence very effective. So imagine that you want to help your reader understand why your point is meaningful. You could ask yourself questions like, why is my point interesting? Why should anyone care? And why is this information important? To help your reader see the implications of your point, you could look at the consequences of thinking in a particular way or looking at a problem in a particular manner. To help your reader understand why something is the way it is, you might say, I've described something or relationship, but why is it like that? Another way you can strengthen your commentary is to help your reader understand how things happen. So you've said something happens, so how does it happen? How does it come to be the way it is? What are the causal relationships? If you want to help your reader understand your reasoning, you could ask yourself, how is this idea related to my thesis? What connections exist between them? Does it support my thesis? If so, how does it do that? And finally, you can help your reader see the connection between your example and your point. So simply asking yourself, how does this example illustrate my point? Answering any one of these questions will help strengthen your commentary and consequently strengthen your use of evidence. The challenge students might face might not be thinking about why the evidence is meaningful, but how to put it into words, how to get started. The National Writing Project has developed sentence frames to help you start your commentary. So if you want to elaborate on your evidence with commentary about how to understand the issue, you could use sentence frames such as, and start your sentences with, knowing this will, basically this means, or the evidence shows. If you're trying to contrast ideas or show how the evidence might change one's thinking, you might say, by focusing on X, a person might miss Y, or at first glance, and what's the first impression, but a closer look shows, and you'll elaborate. Finally, you might try to counter an argument by saying, although proponents of this theory argue X, the evidence shows, and you'll show how it contradicts. Finally, you might want to elaborate on how causal relationships, how one thing causes something else, and clarify that in your commentary. And sentence starters that you can use include, this causes, the effect of this is. If you connect these pieces of evidence, you, and then it seems clear that, and finally, in the end. So you see, these sentence frames will help you get started on the commentary and strengthen your use of evidence. Happy writing.